My grandmother generously served her Bible-believing Christian church for almost 50 years without asking anything in return.
But when she became elderly, disabled, and homebound, her church acted like she did not even exist.
They ignored her until she was in hospice care and literally lying right there on her deathbed. That church showed a sudden interest in telling Grandma to remember your church in your final will.
She waited until the right moment, in front of the right audience, to expose these greedy people. My grandmother was a member of a large, conservative, Bible-believing church for her entire long adult life. This church, which I will call Big White Church, was a member of a large evangelical denomination.
Big White Church was located in a prosperous suburb of a large city in the Bible Belt.
Grandma was very active. She worked in the nursery and helped cook hundreds of church fellowship breakfasts. She accompanied her grandchildren on dozens of retreats and choir tours while teaching youth Bible study nights. She always tithed faithfully and often gave extra for missions and various special offerings throughout the year. Grandma's greatest talent was making other people feel important, and I have seen this happen firsthand many times.
Although I belong to a different church, I often visited with Grandma at Big White Church functions.
I saw her single-handedly cook breakfast for dozens of youth, a task taking over 2 long hours. She asked for a round of applause for the student leader who organized the entire prayer breakfast.
I remember she drove most of the night to retrieve evangelistic materials an assistant pastor had forgotten.
She brought them back in time for the morning program because the assistant pastor had asked her.
His boss, the senior pastor, never found out that the assistant had screwed up the entire thing.
That assistant pastor never even thanked Grandma, which bothered me so much even as a young child.
She said she did not mind at all, telling me her reward was helping children find Jesus.
Her service ended abruptly at 73 when she broke her back in a terrible car accident.
For the last 10 years of her life, she was homebound and could not attend church anymore.
Her mind was just as sharp as ever, but her body wore out a little more daily.
During those years, she made many efforts to reach out to her church leadership and her friends.
Every one of these invitations to visit her home was declined or simply ignored by the church.
Near the end, while in hospice care, she decided to plan her own funeral with her husband.
They called the church and asked for the senior pastor to visit so they could plan together.
Pompous pastor was too busy, but the assistant pastor finally stopped by a few days later instead.
Grandma, Grandpa, and the assistant discussed her funeral for a couple of minutes before he changed topics. He started pressuring her to lay up treasure in heaven by remembering the church in her will.
Grandpa told him firmly that this was neither the time nor the place to discuss her will.
The assistant steered the conversation back to the will with injections about how the church needed support.
Grandpa told him several times it was inappropriate because she was terminally ill and in physical pain.
He would briefly talk about the funeral, but then return to talking about the church's financial needs.
My grandma started crying, and to put this into context, she was a very strong-willed woman.
She was titanium-coated with diamond wrapped in Kevlar, rarely ever crying, especially not for herself ever.
Not one tear fell when the doctor told her she would never walk again after the accident.
She endured 6 months of futile rehab without crying once, showing her immense strength of character throughout. She would shed sincere tears to console others, weeping with those who weep at various family funerals.
But now, my grandmother was sobbing uncontrollably as the assistant pastor continued to pressure her for money.
He escorted him out of their house, not too gently, ending the meeting immediately and very forcefully.
Contrary to expectations, Grandma lived another 6 months, mostly because of her sheer force of sheer will.
Eventually, she passed away, and we held her memorial service at the funeral home, not her church.
Pompous pastor and the assistant were conspicuously absent. No professional Christians from Big White Church attended.
Grandpa stood at the podium and told the crowd he had disinvited the pastors from the service.
He said the service was not the place for reasons, but everyone knew his reasons were good.
He announced it would be an open microphone funeral, inviting everyone to share a story about her.
He invited anyone to describe their friendship or anything else that would honor her memory and comfort.
There were about 100 people there, and at least a third eventually stepped up to speak.
The service, planned for 30 minutes, lasted over 2 hours, and not one single person left early.
There was laughing, crying, and hugging as grandchildren played her favorite songs on piano and acoustic guitar.
We all joined hands and sang her favorite hymns together.
Many remarked afterwards that funerals are actually much better without preachers anyway, or said something very similar. 2 weeks later, it was time to distribute the bequests in Grandma's will, the 1-2 punch. They had separate wills to respect each other's turf, just as their lawyer had previously recommended them.
Nobody thought they were wealthy, and they lived in the same small but charming house for 50 years.
They worked hard and lived modestly, but rumors suggested they had a very nice nest egg saved. The reading of the will was a tradition, an excuse for our large extended family to gather.
We met at birthdays, holidays, and funerals so we could see all of our cousins and aunts.
Wills often contained personal bequests of items with little cash value but very high sentimental family meaning. The family rumor mill was buzzing with speculation encouraged by Grandpa that the will contained some surprises. The reading was held in a conference room at a lawyer's office, with many family members present.
We were all surprised to see Pompous Pastor and the assistant pastor from Big White Church there.
They said the lawyer told them the will had bequests for the church and for them personally.
My siblings and I noticed these preachers appeared to be actively salivating over their expected good fortune. The room was small, every seat was filled, and people were standing in every single remaining space.
The lawyer suggested the preachers sit in the front, making them the only ones facing everyone else. They did not notice that these seats made it easy for everyone to watch them very closely.
It was impossible to leave because they were farthest from the door, with 24 people between.
The bequests were generous. Grandpa kept the house, contents, retirement accounts, and everything else that remained after.
Children and grandchildren received nice amounts of money, and several sentimental items were given to various friends.
Bequests were arranged in order of increasing worth, starting with sentimental items having very small cash value.
Then each grandchild received thousands, followed by even larger amounts for every son, daughter, brother, and sister.
The preachers listened politely with growing anticipation as they noticed the exponential upward trend in Grandma's largesse.
Bequests to the church and preachers were almost last, and the lawyer said this was unusual.
He opened a letter written in Grandma's own handwriting and began to read it to everyone present.
For 10 years, not one person from the church called, visited, or even sent a caring note.
Not one minister or deacon or member she worked with for years ever showed that they cared.
I worked hard for you for years, but when I needed you, you all pretended I didn't.
I only got one visit when I was dying, after many attempts to reach my beloved church.
She had hoped to have her funeral there, so her old church friends might see her again.
But pompous pastor could not find the time to visit or even call to discuss her funeral.
The assistant came by, but only wanted to talk about remembering his church in her final will.
It was then I realized I allowed my church to break my heart for one last time. Grandpa and I prepared my will long before that visit, including a 20% double tithe amount. The letter named the amount as an enormous load of money, generating muffled wows from the heirs.
I felt badly we had not personally remembered such nice people as the pastors, so I changed.
I changed the amount left to the church to match the love they showed me recently instead.
They ignored me while I was suffering after I worked my ass off for them for free.
That is her entire statement, the lawyer said, and now let us get back to the bequests.
Bequest to the assistant pastor, 1 cent. Bequest to pompous pastor, 1 cent. Church bequest, 1 cent. The pastors sat there looking like someone had just injected a gallon of Novocaine into their jaws.
Every friend felt an urge to laugh out loud, but we kept quiet because we knew her.
Grandma was simply setting them up for a 1-2 punch, and the best was yet to come.
There is one last bequest, the lawyer continued, for a charity which I will call Black Charity.
Most of us had no idea what it was, but the preachers knew Black Charity very well.
Their faces displayed shock and horror, as if the money went to demonic eaters for barbecue grills.
Every eye in the room was now fixated on the two pastors, as the silence continued long.
The lawyer, Grandma's son, let the silence continue a few seconds more before he spoke again.
Black Charity was sponsored by a large black church just a few miles from Big White Church.
They ran a food bank, clothing bank, assistance for foster children, and legal aid for the community.
Long ago, Big White Church provided financial support to Black Charity before a very bitter breakup occurred.
Allegedly, the breakup happened because Black Charity practiced the social gospel while they preached the true gospel.
Big White Church even sued to try to get some of their previous financial support money back.
The suit was eventually settled, and very little money actually changed hands between the two organizations then.
Grandma and Grandpa considered leaving then, but reasoned it was better to stay and teach tolerance.
They hoped to reach the youth at their church and break the generational cycle of Southern racism.
My church is my mission field. Grandma used to tell us, "My church is my mission field," a statement we finally understood.
Since then, they had secretly sent a portion of their tithe to Black Charity every single month.
Most of the family didn't find out about any of this until after the meeting had ended.
The pastors obviously understood what Grandma, by her actions, which are more powerful than words, was saying.
To many white Southerners, this was one of the most personally insulting things you could ever do.
The lawyer named the amount, the exact same huge amount that Grandma had named in her letter.
This was the huge amount of money that would have gone to the church if she stayed.
They had to walk past every family member who was now staring at them with knowing looks.
They left without saying a word, disappearing into the hallway while the family finally began to laugh.
The tension broke, and we all celebrated Grandma's brilliant and perfectly timed final lesson to those men.
Grandpa smiled and said that she had been planning that exact moment for a very long time.
The church never mentioned her again, and we never went back to that place ever again either.
The money went to Black charity and helped feed and clothe thousands of people in the community.
Her legacy was not just the money, but the lesson of true love and standing against bigotry.
I learned that true faith is shown through actions, not just through words spoken from a pulpit.
She was a titanium-coated magnolia who taught us all how to fight for what is right today.
We carry her strength with us every day, and we will never forget her final great punch.
She proved that even in death, one person can make a massive difference in this world today.
Her story is a reminder to always look for the truth and to stand up for others.
The world is changing, and her story is a part of that change toward a better future.
Life is full of surprises, and Grandma was the biggest and best surprise of all today.
The sun sets on a long and faithful life, but the impact of her actions remains here. They are the future she fought for, and they will continue her legacy of love and tolerance.
Her love was a bridge that connected us all and showed us the way to be better.
Time moves on, but the memory of her strength and her wit will never, ever fade away.
That office saw a moment of justice that we will tell stories about for many generations now.
She lived a full life, and she ended it on her own terms with grace and power.
Her light continues to shine in the hearts of everyone who knew and loved her very much.
We look forward with hope, knowing that we have the strength of our ancestors behind us now.
This is what she wanted, for us to be together and to remember the good times always.
We honor her today and every day by being the people she taught us to be, always.
It is a reminder that institutions can fail, but the human spirit will always prevail in the end.
She was our mountain, and her strength was our foundation for everything that we do in life.
We are her legacy, and we will continue to shine her light in everything we do today.
Every life is a story, and hers was one of the best stories ever told to us.
End of her life was just the beginning of her story for all of us here. A new day begins, and we carry her memory with us into the bright and hopeful future. This was the story of a grandmother's final victory and the lesson she taught us all today.